we just look at the camera, Ashley, and we say, welcome to the podcast Udstødt. And Ashley, I have to ask you, do you know what udstødt is in English?
Well, yeah, I think so. I can't think of the word right now, but I think I know what
you have a guess? It's something to do with Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, excluded. Now I'm thinking of Norwegian, but yeah.
Excluded.
Excluded, yeah.
But in Norwegian you say utesluttet, or what?
Utstøtt.
Utstøtt,
Yeah,
okay.
it's almost the same. It's the same.
Did they change the word also in Norwegian recently? Removed from the congregation?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
And what is the difference between utstøtt and removed?
Well, I think, they're just trying to find words that carry less weight, but in the end, it's the same thing. So,
it is the same thing. But for me, I mean, they said in Danish it was udstødt, cast out, and then it was udelukket, shut out.
Yeah.
Udelukket.
Yeah.
Utesluttet. Yeah.
Udelukket.
Okay, yeah, it's very similar to the Norwegian and Danish.
Yeah, it is.
And now it's removed from the congregation. But for me, also an outsider, I asked some of my colleagues, what kind of phrase do you think sounds worse? Removed from the congregation or shut out? Udelukket. And they say removed from the congregation sounds very harsh. So
Yeah.
it is strange they use such a hard...
Yeah, they do. I think it's more to do with the history of the word, like expulsion or exclusion, as they say in Norwegian. It's a bit, everyone knows what that means and the connotations around it, but saying removed is like, I don't know. It sounds harsher to us, but I think we also know what it means, that it still carries all of that weight. But,
because they can say, oh, it's a biblical term. Yeah. It's in the Bible. Yeah. Just pick out something. Because utesluttet, udstødt is not disfellowship. You don't find that in the Bible. So it's just a Watchtower thing. Speaking of Norwegian and Danish, because I spoke with some of the American ex-JWs yesterday. And I was talking with another Norwegian guy, and they said, oh, you speak Norwegian, Frank. No, I speak Danish, but you understand each other. Yeah. But it sounded the same. I said, no. Danish is a separate language from Norwegian. And he couldn't understand it, and the Swedish too. So no, we used to have the same language, but then we have dialects and so on. But he said, he could not hear the difference when I spoke Danish and the other person spoke Norwegian. And no, why? What are you talking about? It is a total different way of speaking.
Yeah, it is. It is. For me, Danish sounds very different from Norwegian, but I've lived here a long time. So.
Now you're very nice. It sounds different. Be honest, it sounds horrible. It's true. It does. Okay, then just say some few words in Norwegian and I will respond in Danish. And then you can hear it outside.
Yeah, like anything.
Anything, what did you have for lunch or whatever?
Ja. I dag spiste jeg chicken nuggets til lunsj, faktisk.
Ja, det kraftedeme noget mærkeligt lortemad der. Det gider jeg fandme ikke at høre på. For satan, hvorfor æder du det lort, mand? That's the difference between the Norwegians, they sing. The Swedes, they sing. Danish is half German and a throat disease. So that's your difference. Okay, maybe I was exaggerating a little bit.
Probably.
Okay, so that was our introduction. Ashley Zoe.
Well, actually, my last name is Chichulis. It's a Greek name and no one can pronounce it. So I use Zoe on my social media.
Okay, sounds better, more international.
Yeah.
So you speak actually better English than Norwegian? Or?
Well, these days it's a bit of a mix. I tend to speak a mix of English and Norwegian at home and at work. So none of the languages I speak are perfect. I sort of say that I have the level of speaking every language as a child. It's like I'm not an expert in any of them.
But you have a British English accent.
Yes.
Did you live?
I lived in the UK, in London. Yeah, and I also lived in Athens, Greece.
So your parents were Greeks?
My father is Greek. And my mother was from the UK. Yeah.
Okay. And how did you end up in Norway?
My stepmother is Norwegian. So after living everywhere else, she was, fed up and convinced us all to move to Norway when I was 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's dive right into your childhood. And you were born and raised Jehovah's Witness because both your parents are?
Kind of. My mother converted when she met my father. It's more complicated than that, but let's just keep it simple. But they divorced when I was very young, probably 2 or 3 years old. And when they divorced, she left the organization. I'm not sure why, but my suspicion is that she just couldn't live up to the rules and regulations. So the first years of my life, I spent, as a relatively normal child, celebrating Christmas and birthdays and all of these things. Had a good relationship to my mother's side of the family. But unfortunately, she passed away when I was 6 years old. And then I went to live with my father, who was a Jehovah's Witness and still is. And then my life changed. I actually remember the first Christmas I spent with him, or as Christmas was approaching, I was like, can't we get just a little Christmas tree?
That's my story. It's the same thing. I also grew up normally, and then we're not allowed to. Just a small. Yeah. Wow. Actually, it hurts.
Yeah, it hurt. I remember that feeling very well. I was like, I remember hoping that my dad would surprise me with this small Christmas tree, just out of kindness for me, but he didn't, obviously.
So you were around 6, 7 years old?
Yeah.
Me too. Wow. What are the odds? Sometimes I think it would have been better maybe to be really born in, so you never, because we already tasted the sweetness and
yeah, for sure. Yeah, there were lots of things I lost during that time because my mother's side of the family obviously weren't witnesses, and so my contact with them dwindled quite a bit. I didn't spend as much time with them. And obviously because we weren't celebrating anything anymore, it became a bit complicated. And I slowly kind of lost touch with them and never really had that connection growing up. It's only recently I managed to reconnect with my grandfather, which has been very nice.
On your mother's side?
On my mother's side.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
No, he's been instrumental to the last few years. If I didn't have him, I don't know what I would have done, to be honest.
Okay, so he enlightened you with a lot of backstories from your parents? And
I mean, yeah, to a degree, but I think just having him, I have some family members who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, but he's definitely been the one kind of supporting me in every way he can since I left. And he happened to lose his partner to COVID around the same time that I left. So suddenly we were both very lonely. And he lives in the UK, so we're not close to each other physically, but, we're on the phone all the time and, having Skype calls. And it's just really nice having his backing in my life.
That's nice. And you were never a Jehovah's Witness?
No.
So
never.
Fortunately he wasn't, because then you couldn't have any contact.
Exactly.
Now you are
outside.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then your father meets this Norwegian woman?
Yes.
International convention, or how?
No, on a skiing trip. They went on a skiing trip, and I won't talk too much about how that went, but they got married quite quickly. So I think they got married when I was 7 or 8.
But was it a coincidence? Or was it a Jehovah's Witness group?
It was a Jehovah's Witness group.
Okay.
For sure.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to say a very cool group of Jehovah's Witnesses, if that's allowed. You know, a little, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
I know.
But yeah, they met, and suddenly I had a stepmother in my life, and I was very excited about the prospect of having a mom again. But yeah, unfortunately, our relationship was never very good. She didn't have very much understanding for the position I was in. You know, losing my mother was very difficult, and it had a huge effect on how I behaved and you know how kids are when they've gone through something, they maybe lash out a bit and so I was kind of labeled the difficult child, and I really wasn't really. I was quite a good kid. But anyway, and they quickly had a daughter. So suddenly I was also a big sister, which was very exciting. And then shortly after we moved to Athens. And we're living there. Yeah.
But because they wanted to preach there, where the need graders.
No, I wish I could say that, and this is why, you know, when I was saying earlier, you know, my story is a bit complicated. My parents never really. I mean, they took the truth seriously. I mean, obviously they're shunning me now, so they take it seriously. But in my upbringing, they were kind of like on the sidelines a bit. Like they weren't inactive by any means, but they kind of operated by their own rules a little bit. My father, he was one of these people who, I don't know, he is very romanticizes life, and you know, he actually deviated a lot from what the organization says we should be doing, you know, not aspiring to riches or higher education. He was sort of going in the opposite direction.
Did he dare speak about that publicly?
No, I don't think no, not publicly, but behind closed doors it was very, you know, you should get an education and you need this and that. And I think my family was very concerned with prestige. So it was always, you know, you have to go to the best schools and you have to, you know. And I remember reacting to that very early on as a witness kid. And, you know, what ended up happening was that since they weren't following the rules, I had to follow the rules. And when I started getting into my teens, I was sort of carrying the whole family spiritually, if that makes sense. You know, I was the one encouraging them to go into field service. And I feel so, you know, guilty about that now, and kind of wonder what would have happened if I didn't do that. But, you know, I thought it was the right thing to do. And
but did it have an effect of you also? I mean, raising me, I was a good example also, and I was a sucker for all the good things, and I was standing on the platform, and Frank, he said no to drawing a Christmas tree and so on. Did you experience that too? And everybody's clapping.
Yeah. And it does have an effect on you. I mean, as a kid, you want to feel loved, and honestly, I didn't feel much love at home. The family situation was very strained. I always felt like I wasn't supposed to be there, that I was like the third wheel, the unwanted child. So yeah, getting that validation and love from the congregation had a huge effect on me, and it definitely, how do I say that? Yeah, it brought me closer to the congregation. The indoctrination was stronger for me, you know, as well as, you know, the promise of seeing my mother again. That's really what hooked me.
You really believed in that?
I really did believe in that. That was the first thing people told me when she passed away, you know. I remember when it happened, I like went and hid in the dining room and shut the doors and was hiding under the table, and I was drawing pictures for her for when I see her again in paradise. Because they told me, you know, you're going to see her very soon. It could be, you know, tomorrow for all we know, you know.
In a sense, that's a good comfortness.
Yes, exactly.
In a way.
Yeah.
Even though it's not true, but...
yeah, for sure. And I, you know, in talking to other ex-witnesses and just people in general, I definitely see that I needed the religion, I suppose, to a degree for quite a few years of my life. It did provide me a lot of comfort and the structure I needed to survive. Because if I hadn't had it, I think I could have gone down a very dark path.
That's a very important point. I like you to say that, because you shouldn't be black and white. No. It's all damaging. No. In some way also, I would say Jehovah's Witnesses helped me, because I came from a dysfunctional family, a lot of problems. And I think we are similar in the way that we, in a way, change our... We had our physical family, but our spiritual family was our real family now.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely felt that. I mean, the bonds I had with people in the congregation they felt like they would last forever.
Yeah. Can I ask you something? Because when you mentioned that before, you were looking forward to see your mother again in paradise, being raised, and you see all the pictures and videos. Yeah. Did you ever think about, but what about my father? He's remarried with another woman, and he will see his first woman, his first wife, but who is he going to choose?
Yeah, I did think about that. My father explained to me that since they were divorced in the world, and my mother, you know, shacked up with another man, that she broke their wedding vows. So in that sense, the marriage was over in Jehovah's eyes. So, you know, but I did wonder, you know, I did, it still was a question mark for me.
It still is for all Jehovah's Witnesses, because the governing body, the faithful slave, they don't know. They say, they will. But then Jesus said they will never remarry. There's this story that some Pharisees asked Jesus about if a man remarries and a woman, blah, 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 9 times, who's going to be his wife in the future? They don't know. No. They say even that the marriage constitution is not going to be in the paradise.
Yeah, well, maybe not.
Who cares? Who cares? It's just a funny thought.
Yeah.
Okay, but living in you have this new stepmother from Norway. Your father's Greek. You came from UK. Now you are in Greece again. Did you experience any big differences in the congregation in Greece if you compare to UK?
Yes and no. I mean, the teachings were all the same.
Yeah.
But there was definitely, I don't know if it was just a product of like my family there, or if it was a general culture with the Jehovah's Witnesses. But they were, I noticed in Greece that people are way more relaxed. So, you know, in England, it was like, you know, you go to the meetings 3 times a week, and then you go in field service, and like, no matter what. But in Greece, it was like, the sun's out, we're going to go to the beach, you know. If we,
I like it.
Yeah, if we like miss a meeting or 2, it's not the end, you know. And while I lived there, you know, I was there from when I was 9 to 13 years old, and I became quite a slacker, in the truth. I wasn't really taking it seriously, and I remember feeling a lot of guilt because I knew in my heart at the time that it was the truth, you know, and I wasn't doing enough, and I was being sidetracked by all these other things. And
you didn't take the stand for Jehovah.
I didn't take the stand. I wanted, you know, and I was the cool kid at school, and because I was from London, and that was like, you know, that was cool apparently.
So you weren't bullied in school because you were Jehovah's Witness, or did you tone it down? Nobody actually knew?
I toned it down. The thing is, I was bullied quite a lot at school from a very early age, not just because of the Jehovah's Witness. I think I was just a bit of a weird kid, an easy target. But definitely before I moved to Greece, I was picked on for being a witness. I was going to a Greek Orthodox school in London, and all the kids were just, you know, I was such an easy target for them. You know, when they would come and ask me, you know, why don't you celebrate birthdays or Christmas, you know, and your answer is because it's Satan's work, you know, it doesn't score you any points with the kids. Not that those were my exact words, but you know.
And then in the Kingdom Hall, oh, good little sister, that you took a stand for Jehovah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they do that all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so the life in Greece were in a way easier, more slacking, but not so difficult like you.
I think part of it was that I lived. So my stepmother had a huge issue with me, and I think it's to do with the resurrection promise. To be honest,
she was jealous.
I don't know, but I hypothesized that she, that she was jealous of my mother, and because I'm a product of my father's love with another woman, it was very hard to see me around all the time. And I guess if you believe that that person's going to come back into your life, it can be a bit, you know, because I was always like, but she's dead. Like,
how can you be jealous on it? Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to have photos of my mother displayed in my room because that was too hard for her. And I had to just understand that. And I did. I made excuses for her all the time, and I just wanted to be loved by her, you know.
Did you feel also that she gave all her love to her own child? She gave birth?
Definitely.
So you were second
definitely,
place.
And I was someone that they needed to be protected from all the time. I was a bad example. You know. But
Ashley, that what you're telling there could be maybe as well in any other family. Does it have
sure.
It doesn't have to be Jehovah's Witnesses Guild in that way. She was just a bit jealous.
Definitely not. She was just a bit jealous. Yeah. I just always reacted to it as a witness because, you know, parents get quite a lot of direction from the organization. And I was always like, you're telling me to do all these things and to be a, you know, obedient child, but you don't follow any of the direction, you know. So there's definitely a lot of variation in families who are Jehovah's Witnesses, as there are in the world. But yeah, it's not necessarily anything to do with the Jehovah's Witness teachings.
But you can say that if you're a dysfunctional family, it's not a good choice to be a Jehovah's Witness, because then you can hit your child, your unwanted child, with a lot of paragraphs. It says this is a Watchtower. Yeah. Read this paragraph and remember this, and I'm your. So it's not a good thing for that.
No, and also the hierarchy within the family is sort of like, I remember that was used a lot. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with my father because my stepmother wanted that time with him all the time. And he worked abroad for a period of time. I almost never saw him, and then I'd be sent to bed extremely early so that she could be alone with him. And it's sort of like, and I remember him telling me later on, you know, I have to live with this person for the rest of my life. She's my wife, but you're going to move out one day, you know, but I'm with her forever, you know, in paradise, you know, so who do I prioritize?
So you felt even your own father took her part?
Oh yeah, definitely.
He didn't have any feelings or understanding for you?
No, it's not that he didn't have any feelings, but I don't think he understood me. But equally, you know, he definitely didn't stick up for me in any meaningful way, always taking her side. You know, I was always brought up in their arguments, you know, I was always the problem. And yeah, so in that sense, the JW teachings did affect the situation in that sense, where it's like, my wife comes first. You as a child are kind of, you know, you're not that important. So, yeah.
And then eventually you moved to Oslo because your stepmother didn't like living in Greece, or why?
Yeah, she was just tired of, I don't think she felt she fit in either cultures in London or in Greece. So we moved to Norway, even though I was about to finish my study, like I was finished at school, and then I had to take 3 more mandatory years of school here, which now I'm grateful for.
And you were around 16, 17?
I was 16. Yeah.
You didn't speak one word Norwegian?
No, but I grew up listening to, speaking to my sisters in Norwegian, so I picked it up very quickly. It was a familiar language, so yeah. And I had an ear for languages. You know, I actually wanted to be a missionary in South America because I loved Spanish, and you know, yeah, I loved languages. So
you were a zealous publisher. You really believed it. You didn't have doubts at that time.
No.
Never. Nothing. You just took it all in.
I took it all in. But once I was in the school library and naively I decided to Google Jehovah's Witnesses and some YouTube videos. Yeah,
that's not good.
No.
That's not good. Satan is watching.
I know, but I didn't know this yet. No one had warned me about these things yet. We didn't have, or I didn't have access to the internet at home. So, you know, anyway. I'm sitting in the school library and this YouTube video pops up of survivors of child sex abuse in the US who were protesting outside Bethel or something. I can't remember it. It was a long time ago. And then I went down this rabbit hole and I kept pressing on the next one because I was like, this can't be true. No. And I remember coming home and telling my dad about it, and he was like, actually, those are apostate lies. And I was like, what is that? And, you know, he explained everything to me, told me apostates are bitter and hate Jehovah's organization. And yes, sometimes bad things happen within the organization, but, you know, God is going to fix all of these things in paradise. And if people were just humble enough and waited for paradise.
Wait for Jehovah.
Yeah.
He will fix it.
Exactly. So.
But did you feel bad about Googling it and had a bad conscience afterwards? You were just curious.
I was just curious. I didn't feel bad because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do it at the time. But now I knew. I just felt a little like sad on behalf of these people that I saw in these videos because they did seem genuinely upset. But very quickly, you know, after going to some meetings and talking to some other people, you know, it quickly fades into the background. And I didn't think much more of it after that. Yeah, I pretty much just took every explanation I got as truth and was like, okay, the cognitive dissonance was real.
Yeah.
You know?
I know how it is. I know totally what you're talking about. So you felt, for me, it's like in the congregation as a Jehovah's Witnesses, you felt like a safe spot, a safe place.
Yeah.
Because what were the alternative?
Exactly. The alternative wasn't very good.
You never thought about living Jehovah's Witness, living a worldly life, no?
I mean, to be fair, well, in Norwegian they call it at man guttegal. That someone is boy crazy.
Guttegal.
And I think that was a product of many things, but especially not having my father around as much as I needed him to be, made me a little bit focused on finding this man figure in my life to save me. And now I forgot where I was going.
No, good God. So you were seeking male company in a way because you wanted to replace your father.
Yeah, I think I was very I didn't understand that at the time. I just, I want to date these boys and, very innocent. But I now in hindsight, I realize why. It's probably due to some other things too.
You can tell if you want those other things, but isn't it just normal? You're a teenager. You have hormones.
Exactly.
You want to experience in the sexual life also, but you are suppressed in Jehovah's Witnesses. You're not even allowed to masturbate. Or don't know each other. Everything's so wrong.
Yeah.
So,
and my father was extremely strict and very overprotective, and I was saying I'm terrified of him feels a bit extreme, but that was my reality when I was that age. I was scared of my father because he had a hot temper, and I saw how he was when he got road rage, and I was like,
he's Greek.
Yeah,
he's Greek,
yeah, exactly.
So
He's Greek. He has yeah, exactly. But I knew that there was no alternative outside the Jehovah's Witnesses, because I knew I would face his wrath if I ever did anything wrong. So I think, I was very scared of that. And it wasn't, and also I wanted to be a good girl. I wanted to be the good girl. And I followed all the rules to a T. I never dated anyone until I was of age.
What age? 18, 19, yeah.
I got married at 19, so
you got married. Wow. And when you're talking about dating, was that some young brothers in the congregation are also worldly men?
No, not worldly. I was tempted. There was a boy in my class who was just a very gentle boy and very handsome, and I remember thinking, he's just as nice as a JW guy. Why can I not, and I remember that being that was a hard temptation to resist.
Have you ever stalked him afterwards on Facebook?
He kept in touch with me after school, and I would get messages from him like once a year being like, hey, thinking of you, hope you're doing okay. And then when I left, I got in touch with him. I was like, can we talk? And he didn't even know I was a witness. And when I told him all of these things, and I told him I had a crush on him when we were at school, and he was like, I did too. And I was like, God damn it.
But it's never too late, Ashley. It's never too late. But he's living in United Kingdom.
No, but he lives in another city. Yeah,
but in Norway. It's a free country. It's never too late. Go for him. Hope he's not in a relationship, or you are not.
No.
But you got married like many Jehovah's Witnesses, only 19. Yeah. Welcome to the club. There are a lot of similarities between your story and mine. And what was that? Were you really in love? Or was it just that you can have sex together, or we need to be married? But what were your reasons?
Oh, God, I think there's many layers to it, but yeah, for sure, a huge part of it was that, you can't have sex before you're married, and I'm extremely hormonal, and but also I think, using psychological terms, there was a bit of trauma bonding involved. He also had a difficult upbringing, and we kind of bonded over that, and we both just wanted to get away from our families and start something of our own. So that had a lot to say as well. But yeah, I can't say we were in love. I think we dated. We were dating for 4 months before he proposed. And then we got married like 6 months later. So, that was an interesting time because because we were both very hormonal, we couldn't keep our hands to ourselves, and I felt extremely guilty and forced him to confess to the elders with me. We had to go twice, I think. So we were in a what do they call them in English? Judicial committee.
Yeah.
And it was the second time I was experiencing.
I'm laughing because I'm just thinking that mostly I ask about this, and they say we all went to the elders, and they were so afraid, and some didn't do it, and they have the bad conscience because then they couldn't be married in the Kingdom Hall. A lot of bad things. But did you get married in the Kingdom? No, because of that. No. And everybody knows.
Yeah, they didn't let us get married in the Kingdom Hall, and
that's a bummer.
It was a bummer. And then we got a warning, because they were like, you'll be privately reproved this time, but if you do something again, it might be more serious. And that scared me so much. So, but not enough to stop us from continuing.
Of course, you're a human being. It's called hormones.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
is, and the more you get to know you're not allowed to. That's the same thing happening to Adam and Eve.
Exactly. Like, it's the forbiddenness that makes it so exciting.
Yeah.
That's the worst part. Yeah, so, but then I didn't dare go to them again. But that meant that we started our marriage off on a bit of a, on the wrong foot, because now I'm feeling extremely guilty. I'm worrying that if Armageddon comes tomorrow, I'm going to die because I haven't confessed my sins. And people told me, like my best friend told me, because she was aware of the first time, she told me, Jehovah isn't going to bless your marriage now. You're going to have to work really hard to get his blessing in your marriage. It's going to be really hard.
Oh, they are so loving in that congregation, aren't they?
Yeah, it's so loving. And I remember, and I took that on my shoulders and was like, my husband didn't care. He was already a bit out mentally, I feel. But yeah, I took it really seriously. And I remember it was so random, but like a couple of years into our marriage, there was that terrorist attack in Paris. And I have family in Paris, so for some reason it felt too close to home, and it was like a sign of the times, and I freaked out, and I was like to my husband, are you sure we shouldn't confess?
Because of that terrorist attack?
Yeah, because it just, for me, it just like made me feel like, no, the end is here soon.
Makes
and
sense,
it was completely unrelated, but
No.
As a witness, every bad thing that happens is like a sign of the times.
It could have been worse, Ashley. It's my fault that happened in Paris. You didn't go that far.
No.
Of course not. But I understand you. It's so in your indoctrination. In some people, it's very, very true. And then in your ex-husband, his case, of course not. Didn't
he didn't really care that much about it. And then it wasn't until a few years later we moved to Oslo. And we're in a new congregation, and I really don't feel like things are going well in the congregation. I mean, our marriage wasn't doing well. But now even the congregation, like I don't feel welcome here. Not like in the previous congregations we had been in. And I think that's also mostly to do with the fact that the other congregations, they had seen me grow up, so they kind of still take care of you as a sister. But when we moved to a completely new place, I really felt that everyone was like, well, you're married, so we don't care about you because your husband is your spiritual head, so we have no responsibility for you. So I was very much like cast to the side. And meanwhile, my husband isn't taking the truth seriously, so I felt very alone.
He didn't reach out for being ministerial.
No, and he wanted to have a beard, and it was like constant arguing.
He should just have waited for Jehovah. Now it's allowed. Oh, we said that. Wait for Jehovah.
Exactly. I'm sure his parents are saying that now.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
But let me ask about the judicial committee.
Yes.
Because it's different. It's not black and white. It's not all elders doing it. But did you experience that in your case, they ask you very intimate questions, or did you just say, no, we don't want to hear details?
I've experienced both, because that time they didn't.
No?
But my husband, or my future husband, was present in the room with me when we were talking to them. So I feel like they let me off a bit lightly.
Because of him?
Yeah, because he was in the room. But the first time I was in the judicial committee, for similar reasons, I was there for like 4 or 5 hours.
Oh my.
Yeah. And they were asking me very intimate questions, and at the time I didn't think much of it. I was uncomfortable, but I thought, well, this must be necessary for them to make a judgment on me, They
have to find out if it's porneia.
Yeah, exactly.
That Greek
porneia,
word, porneia.
Exactly. So that was way more uncomfortable than the second time with my husband. But so I've experienced.
What do you think? At that time, you didn't think so much about it. Oh, they're elders. I have to show respect. But looking back now,
yeah, it's horrible.
What is the reason for them to ask?
No.
They say ponea, but a lot of my guests have said it's just horny old men.
Yeah.
It's just feeding their imagination, it's fantasy.
Exactly.
And I said in the beginning, I don't think so. I think but I'm beginning to believe it more and more. Why?
They don't really need to ask that many. Like they need to. Yeah, they could cut it way shorter than what they do. They go way overboard.
5 hours. That's hell.
It was horrible, and I remember feeling so dirty and judged and so shameful because as a woman, I experienced this both times. They really put it on you, like you're the temptress. You know, you're the one that like initiated.
Can you spell to gaslighting?
Yeah, exactly.
It is.
Yeah,
it is always your fault.
It always.
Oh my God, Ashley, what an experience. Okay, so you moved to Oslo, and your marriage not going well, and then what happens?
Let me see. Well, I managed to make a few good friends in the congregation, and so my husband is he's an intellectual, I would say. He's a very intelligent guy, and one of the problems he had within the organization was that he felt that people they weren't dumb, but that, you know, they weren't really thinking correctly. Like there was no critical thinking and all of these things. So we became friends with a couple, an older couple, and one of them, he was a bit more like-minded with my husband, and we became quite close with them. I've always had friends who are much older than me within the organization, and we love them to bits. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because later on, during COVID, we've just moved into our dream apartment. You know, finally things are seeming a bit better in our marriage, you know, and my husband comes out of his office one day and he's like, I don't think I want to be part of this organization anymore. And I'm just like, what? What are you saying? You can't be saying this. And he didn't really want to influence me. But I had so many questions. I'm too curious. And at some point I was like, no, I can't hear anymore. We need to get you some help.
He's spiritual sick.
Yeah, he's spiritually sick. Exactly. Yeah.
That's funny. Okay. But you really thought that, wow, Satan is having his grab on him now.
Yeah, definitely. It broke my heart, really, because I didn't want him to be in that situation. Like, I felt like he was setting himself up for a very lonely existence, because I would still be hanging out with everyone and he would be shunned. And I didn't want that for him. Never mind, you know, death at Armageddon and everything. That's bad enough. And I knew he would never do anything that would allow me to divorce him either. So I felt really like stuck, you know, like, okay, and now you're unbelieving as well. You know, like, our marriage sucks, and now I have to have an unbelieving husband as well. Me and with my narcissism there, but so I asked him to talk to this elder who was more on his wavelength, you know, because I was thinking, if anyone can, you know, make this right, it's him. If anyone can.
So there was one intelligent elder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he talks to him, and I'm like, sure, it's going to help. And he's like, no, he couldn't answer any of my questions. I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? And then I was so desperate. I was like, can you talk to your father? You know, my dad can talk to you. And like, what about this person and that? And he tried for me. He did. He tried talking to all of these people, and no one could answer his questions. So in the end, I took it upon myself because I was like, well, I know you better than all of these people, so maybe I can help you. And he starts showing me all this evidence, you know, that the Jehovah's Witnesses or the doctrine is false.
Okay. Just a couple, maybe just one. What did he find out that was totally directly lies? 2 + 2 is not 5, it is 4. Do you remember some of the things he mentioned? And you said, okay, you're right, I cannot explain this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started with, what was that? The case in Australia about child sex abuse and Jeffrey Jackson on the sand and all of this. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back for him. And he was telling me about this and I was like, there's no way he lied on the stand. And then he shows me the video and I'm like,
it would be presumptuous to say. I showed it yesterday in another video. I can show it again. It's a very interesting clip.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using. The scriptures clearly show that someone can act in harmony with God's Spirit in giving comfort and help in the congregations.
But were there other doctrines that you
many.
also thought, yeah, you're right, there's something wrong here?
I think for me, it started with seeing the hypocrisy in the organization. So first it started with me seeing, like, for example, the fact that they were an NGO in the UN and all of that. I was like, you've got to be kidding me, you know. The same year they published the Apocalypse, no, what is it, the Revelation book.
Oh, yeah, with the United Nations being the sky.
And that really shook me. And we read through the Elders book that had been leaked online, and I really reacted to the different protocols. Like, we read the part about what to do if someone comes forward with a child sex abuse allegation of someone in the congregation, and it was very like wishy-washy and very like, you may inform the parents of their right to contact the police.
That was in June 2019, Watchtower.
And it was in a Watchtower too? Yeah.
So you were still in, that's the period we're talking about, 2019, just before COVID?
I left, this was more like December 2020, January 2021. And then we read the part of like what to do if someone like comes into the congregation during a meeting and causes some sort of hysterical, you know, like it comes to disrupt a meeting, I think was the word. And it was like, call the police immediately. And I was like, wow, you know, it's like you may inform the parents of their right to call the police and then call the police immediately. It's like, what's more important here? And like how they ask, you know, people getting baptized if they have HIV, that they can't get baptized in the same pool as everyone else. I was like, there's no science behind that. I knew that even. Like, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And so it started with those things, and then we started watching videos on YouTube of like people debunking the JW beliefs and the prophecies and, you know, the...
But you didn't contact the evil apostates directly? Went to groups? No,
nothing like that. But it all happened very quickly. I think this all happened over the course of a weekend. And I just remember me and my husband sitting on the sofa, like laughing at how ridiculous it all was and how dumb we've been for following this our entire lives. And we were just like, we couldn't do anything other than laugh. We were just like, this is so comical.
That's a quick wake-up call in only a week. But then you have to consider your feelings. Your brain understands 2 plus 2 is not 5 and all that. You can laugh. But you have your relationship with your father and all that. Growing up, as you mentioned before, he was a very hard father and so on. And all your nice friends in the congregation. Yeah, maybe not in Oslo, but in the other congregations. You have all these feelings for the people.
Yeah.
That you had to deal with also. That you cannot do that in one week.
Well.
No, you did that.
The thing was that I realized very quickly, like I am one of these people, I can't lie. I have no poker face. And after years of suppressing parts of myself that I now acknowledged, things had to move quickly. I need to get out right now. Not to mention the fact that they're getting state funding per member. So I was like, I don't want, and they're not getting anything in my name, you know. I just knew that being free meant more than the emotional implications. And I had some conversations with my father and an uncle and with my best friend. And it was hard. It was very difficult.
How did they react? Did they try to convince you to come back?
They tried to convince. I mean, my best friend was she just like, okay. She was very upset. But my father and my uncle were very argumentative. And even though I presented them with all of these new facts that I had found, it was like they just, you know how it is. They have like this checklist and they go round and round in circles, and it's like it's exhausting. You know, because you get to the end and you think you've like that. Well, that's it. You know, like you can't convince me anymore. And they're like, yes, but you have to remember that this is an imperfect organization, and it's like that's the bottom line for everything. And it was just, yeah. So after those conversations, I wrote like a message to everyone I loved, and told them like, I'm not going to tell you my reasons why, because I know you won't want to read that, but I'm just letting you know I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. And I know that means that you won't want to talk to me anymore or see me, but I want you to know that you're still welcome in my home and that I'm still here for you, because that was really important to me, that I was putting the ball in their court. Because something that they kept telling me when I was having these conversations, like, you're leaving us. I'm like, I'm not leaving you. I'm leaving the organization, but I'm not leaving you as an individual. I still love you. So I wanted to make that very clear. And I sent it to everyone. And me and my husband agreed that we would just...
write a disassociation letter, and then the week after it's being mentioned in the congregation.
Yeah.
Have you ever, since then, have any contacted you from your own congregations or friends?
There have been, let me think. There was one guy who contacted me. He had heard that I had left. And he wanted to like have an argument about it. And he was telling me how dumb I am and that he would never expect this from me, and that I've obviously gone mad, and so I heard from him. And I recently bumped into an old witness friend. I had just been at the hairdressers and I was on my way out, and they're sitting, 2 witnesses. And I was like, well, at least I look good.
At least my hair is good. Yeah. I'm looking fabulous as a worldly woman.
Yes, exactly. That's funny. But she texted me because she saw me. I just waved and like kept walking. And she also wanted to have a whole discussion, which was really intense. And, it's been a few years since I've left now. And it was kind of, I don't know, eye-opening to hear from her, because it kind of reminded me how far I've come since then, you know.
They're just stuck in the same limbo, and they're not developing.
No.
And if you meet her as a 50 years old, 70 years old, she never developed and moved on. That's a terrible thing. You're really wasting your life.
Exactly. It's sad to see.
So what about your contact to your father and your uncle? Almost.
I have no contact with them, or they have no contact with me. I've had a little bit in between. Actually, I actually met my father a year ago, around this time actually, because a magazine here published an article about me and my experience with the witnesses, and they called him to get a comment.
Oh my.
That was uncomfortable.
That was uncomfortable. I don't want to speak about, and it's definitely not your stepmother. She would just say, I told you she was a bad woman. I told you so. I knew that from the beginning.
Yeah, always been trouble. Yeah, so, and he was coming to Oslo for work, so he was like, do you want to meet for coffee? And I was like, it's been 3 years, and okay, but fine. And it was a very bizarre encounter because, you know, I was kind of a daddy's girl by default since my mother passed away, and I always had like this pull towards him, and I was really scared of how I would feel when I saw him. But it felt like meeting a complete stranger. And it's sad when I say it, but as I told him too when I met him, I was like, I don't think you understand what this is doing to me, because I've had to mourn all of you as if you're dead. Not because I want you to be dead, but you're treating me as dead. I didn't know how you would react when I left. I assumed you'd never want to speak to me or see me again. And here you are randomly asking me out for coffee. For what? You know, and it turns out they're still hoping that I come back. And I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, I'm basically an apostate. I can't come back even if I wanted to. I wouldn't be able to come back. And he's like, well, we can still hope. And I was like, where was this energy when I was a child? You know, where was all of this?
Do you think actually he took contact because of the new Mark Sanderson rule from last year that you are now allowed to contact?
That was before.
That was before.
Before the new rules.
Yeah. Have you been so lucky to have also a visit from the elders trying to convince you to come back? So,
no, I think
maybe because you were in the newspaper. Then you're a true apostate.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I've been very outspoken from the beginning. When I went to university to study religion, I wrote a lot of articles for the university newspaper. One was called A Matrix Story, and the other one was called The C Word, where I was trying to argue that we should have a definition for words like, for groups like the Jehovah's Witnesses, because academics don't like to use the word cult.
It's true.
Yeah.
Maybe you can, because that's very interesting. You've been studying religion on the university.
Yeah.
What kind of line? A religion in what way?
It's not theology. It was called religious sciences. So we were mostly, it was more like an anthropological, historical, a little psychological perspective of religion. And it was fascinating. I learned so much, and it gave me a very well-rounded view of religion in general.
Would you say that it helped you being deprogrammed from Jehovah's Witness?
It did. I think I must find the name of this book. One of the first books I read for my first class at university, I think it was called An Introduction to Religious Sciences. It was written by Craig Martin, that I remember. And it's a very small, thin book, but I feel everyone should read it, because he really goes into the nitty-gritty of how, like, the hierarchy of religions is set up and how they give weight to certain titles and words, and like the whole structure of religion, how it works and behaves. And that helped me a lot to kind of understand Jehovah's Witnesses as well, and the control that they have and how they implement that control, how they manipulate. And
That's
it was
very interesting.
eye-opening.
So I haven't prepared you. It's okay. Actually, I cannot say anything about that. I'm not an expert.
No.
But what is the difference between a cult and a sect?
A cult and a sect. Well, that's the thing. They don't use these words in academia.
No, I know. It's the same thing in Denmark.
They don't.
But it's Denmark. It's not so bad to be a sect as it is to be a cult. Cult, you more think about Jonestown and drinking the Kool-Aid and all that.
Right.
Jehovah's Witnesses are not that category.
Yeah.
But they're more like a sect because they're indoctrinating. But I know universities and the high up, they
don't use it at all.
It's just a movement.
They call them. I think the term Jehovah's Witnesses come under is just what was it called?
High control.
New
group?
religious movement is what they.
Religious.
So because it was like a historical phenomenon where a lot of new religions started up, including the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they come onto this new religious movement. But
so the only thing is that then it sounds just like yet another harmless organization.
Exactly, and this was my problem, and I had many discussions with my professors about this as well. Where I was trying to get them to understand the difference. One of my professors here, he was like, "Yeah, but Catholics teach their children that if they don't behave, they'll burn in hell." And I had to think for a minute. I was like, "Well, yeah, that is true." But then I was like, "No." The difference is that Armageddon can come at any moment and you can be killed and your friends can be killed. It's very different. It's like hell is something that happens after you die, but Armageddon is imminent. It can happen whenever. So you're constantly like on the watch. You're constantly guarded and anxious and scared as a child.
And then there are a lot of other arguments. The Catholics, they don't have this shunning part like Jehovah's Witnesses.
Exactly.
They're not tearing families away, and I cannot see you if you not continue being a priest, whatever. So, in my opinion, it is a sect, even though I'm not allowed to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
But we live in a time where you have to really be careful with what words you use.
Exactly.
I'm almost getting sick of it. It has to be political correct. Okay. Ashley, I saw you yesterday in the courthouse, and you were not testifying, but you might as well have been one of the witnesses.
I don't know. I don't know if my story is that special, but I am very open to talking about my experience.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we share our stories, and this weekend meeting so many of the people who came from abroad as well. It's been like, it's so nice to feel that you're not alone in your experience.
Did you almost get the old feeling of coming to conventions? And I felt bad. It's like being a Jehovah's Witness again, just on the other side. And that was very funny, but it was encouraging to use a JW expression. I
even like when we arrived at the court, there was a girl there that I used to be quite close with who's still a JW.
And she was there on the JW side.
Yeah, and I just saw her in the lobby, and I like waved at her, and she just gave me this look that was, I mean, if looks could kill.
Was that the dark-skinned girl?
Yes.
Not so. Oh yeah. But she looks very nice, actually.
Yeah. I mean,
she looks like a really good person.
Yeah.
And she believes, but. And that's the hardest thing.
It is.
Because it's easier to criticize the governing body and Stephen Lett, rubber face, and make fun. But there are real human beings behind. We know them by heart that we actually care for.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you stand on this? Would you, if she really believes that, your old friend you saw yesterday, do you think it's your job, or do you have a goal to take her out of Jehovah's Witnesses, to convince her you have been brainwashed? Look at this.
No, I feel like this is a very sensitive thing. When I first left the Witnesses, I was so excited about my new life, and all the potential it held. But over the last few years, in processing everything properly and my emotions and feeling the loss and the grief, and I wouldn't really wish this on anyone. I really wouldn't. So I don't want to take it upon myself to try to wake people up. I'm here as a safe space for people who do, but I'm not actively trying to wake people up because it isn't a pleasant experience. I mean, the shunning aside, there's so much to come to terms with when you leave and enter the real world. You know, I mean, you're just as much an outsider in the real world as you are to the real world when you're a JW, because you're different. You have a different culture, different upbringing. You haven't been involved in politics. You don't know how to date. You know, there's all these things that are completely foreign. And especially when you get out as an adult, it's like there's things you should know at this age. I find that especially with us women as well, where we've just always been under our father or husband or whatever. We don't have that independence you need to survive in the world, and it's a hard road to walk for sure.
And that's also what you told me before we pressed the record button, that it's a subject that is very important for you by heart. Again, using the word feminist would be too harsh maybe, but you are actually having that approach to the misogynist, what do you call it?
The misogynist
inside the Watchtower, what it made you, and how to live and deal with it afterwards. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, I realized, like, one of the things I realized when I left the Witnesses was that I'm bisexual, and you know, it had never even crossed my mind before. I mean, I remember joking with some of my friends, like, if I was in the world, I'd probably be with women too. But it didn't cross my mind that I was bisexual. I thought being gay was a choice because of that, because you could go both ways, right? I didn't understand that some people like, no, it's just true. This. I realized how sexually repressed I was. You know, my marriage suffered a lot because of that. I have health issues because of the sexual repression. And it does a number on you mentally as well. I was extremely depressed most of my 20s. I was chronically ill. And the switch I saw in myself when I was no longer being repressed was huge. I was a different person. So I know the effect it has. I took a class in sexology as well when I was at university, and I learned a lot there too. And you know, there's this phenomena called the whore and the Madonna. Where, and this is in the world too, but you see it a lot in the organization too. You have like this idea, or men have this idea, that there's some women, the Madonna, who are marriage material. They're going to bear your children, you know, they're going to be the mom, you know, but they don't really see her as a sexual being. And then you have the whore, where you just use and abuse, and that all the sexual fantasies are going on to you know. And I remember I had kind of an aha moment, thinking about how my father treated me and how I've found some things out about him recently, about his past. And I was thinking, wow, he had this view of women, and that's why he was so protective of me speaking to boys and things, because he basically sexualized me in a really, like, not in like a gross way, but like he saw me through that lens, and therefore he needed to protect me, you know, because that's how he saw women. And he probably knew that other JW men felt the same way.
And they are all sexually suppressed.
Yes.
I was 28 years old, and we have to, because as usually compared with that you had like this straight jacket on, or you like a spring being pressed together. You're not allowed to do anything. Learn to know your own sexual behavior. What am I? What are my needs, and so on. And then you suddenly, it just jumps around every car, and you make a lot of stupid. But I think that's you have to go through that if you want to come to the other side. Have this experience, but where other people are just experienced from small and teenager, finding out who they are as a Jehovah's Witness, leaving at 28 or even worse, 40 years old. You have to experience it in very, very short time, and that makes you crazy.
It does. It makes you crazy, and as a woman, it's very dangerous as well.
Yeah, it is.
And like when you come into the world, you don't really know. Like people have different expectations. I was one of these people that saw the world with kind of rose-tinted glasses suddenly because everything the JWs said became invalid to me. So I was like, oh, people in the world must be great. And then you kind of throw yourself out there and you can find yourself in many dangerous positions. And I think that's something worth talking about. Definitely.
That is a very important point, because thinking that everything is just rose red when you come out, no, don't be naive, because there will be, especially when you're a woman, people taking advantage.
Yeah,
oh,
definitely.
she's innocent. I can use her. She's programmed like this. A lot of young women coming out of Jehovah's Witnesses has experienced the worst men in the world because they know who to target.
Exactly. Yeah. It can be scary.
So what would be your last and best advice to especially young women leaving Jehovah's Witness to avoid the worst situations afterwards? Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it?
I think the most important thing is to ask if you actually like this person that's in question, or if you're just what's the word? Or if you just like the validation you're getting. I think as women growing up as Jehovah's Witnesses, we put a lot of weight on how men see us because they've always been the ones to give us our worth or validate our worth, and without them we've been nothing. And in the dating world, out here, you have to be very careful because people can take advantage. So know your worth. Know that it doesn't come from outside of you or from a man, and be careful. I think, and educate yourselves on sexual health, because I didn't have that growing up. I was sort of kind of like kept away from it, which has had some consequences. So I would, that would be my advice. Yeah.
That are very good advice. And then you can study further on into the university of, for example, religious psychology and what's going on and how it develop and so on. Or even just start with the Watchtower history.
Yeah.
That will also give you an eye opener. Who is that? Who is the Rutherford?
Yeah.
That, I won't say it woke me up, but it really showed me how man-made this organization is.
Yeah,
but that's just a side part.
Yeah.
What you're saying there is very important for moving on in your life in general.
Yeah, definitely. And there are good people out there. I recently had a very, very nice experience, if you don't mind me talking about it. But I was working at this Italian pizza place for a couple of years next to my studies, and I really got on well with the owner, my boss. And last year, she promoted me to be a manager, and then a few months later, I found out she was selling the place. And, I jokingly said to her, if I could afford this, I would buy it myself, And she was like, maybe we can make that happen.
What?
And I never in a million years expected for someone, because we work together, but we had a professional relationship, but I liked her. I didn't realize she cared so much about me and my story. I had been open with her about it. And she was like, no, I'm all about helping women, and you've been through a lot, and I'm in a position to help you. So somehow I doubted it the whole time. There was months of me being like, will it not happen? Is it possible? Is it? And she made it happen. And now I own a restaurant because of her.
You did buy it for 10 Norwegian kroner.
Yeah.
Or maybe not that.
No. It's on a down payment. Yeah, it's a down payment.
So you are running it right now? Have employees?
Yes.
Can I go there tonight to eat? Or what? I would like to have do you have a pizza called number 28? No, 69, 66, 666, and it's called the apostate pizza. I would love to have an apostate. Could you make an apostate pizza?
I can make an apostate
pizza. A lot of jalapenos. It has to be strong.
Spicy.
Very spicy. You have to make it. Oh, please do that.
I could make that happen.
But it's a wonderful story. Because like inside Jehovah's Witnesses, they're good people. They're also bad people.
Yeah,
and the same thing out in the world. You just have to figure out how to find the good people and how to avoid all the bad ones. Very good advice, Ashley. Congratulations being a pizza owner.
Thank you. It was a very full circle moment because on Sunday a bunch of the ex-witnesses came and had lunch there.
Oh.
I opened it just for them that day and it was an amazing experience. It was like, wow, it's like full circle. Yeah. Really blew my mind. Really.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Yeah. But there are good people out there. Very, very good.
Yeah.
I recently also experienced something for me that I say, what? Of course, it could also happen inside Jehovah's Witnesses. And then no, I don't think so. But I've been doing this podcast for around 6 years, and all my equipment is in a small apartment, and my fiance is very patient. Julie is very sweet and understandable, even though she haven't had the same background. You don't know anything. Actually, I don't think it interests her that much. But it's important. So I have all my equipment, and then there's this guy coming from nowhere saying, you can have my office in the center of Copenhagen.
Wow.
Right in the center, on the square.
Wow.
What? And he said, you can use it. I only work there from 8 to 2 o'clock p.m. And afterwards, in the weekend, and I said, but it's so much equipment. I have to pay something for it. No, it's an important work you do, Frank. I will, of course not. And he's not, some people also, that kind of people, they do something for you to expect something going back and return. And he's definitely not like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but so there are people like that.
There are people like that. I was starting to wonder for a minute, I'm not going to lie. I had a very hard year last year, a bit of an existential crisis. I felt very alone. It was a hard year. And when this happened, I was like, there's no way this is real. And I was like a bit, I didn't really trust it. And I started like wondering, what does she want in return for me, But she's just lovely. And I think she's kind of has taken it upon herself to be a bit of a mother figure, and I really love that. She's still mentoring me through everything, and it's just beautiful to see that there are good people in the world, because you do meet a lot of questionable people out here in the world. I'm not going to lie,
To say the least, questionable people.
You do. Yeah. No, but it's good. It's good.
It's good, actually. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I think it's time for us to say thank you very much, but very interesting. And I wouldn't call you some kind of an activist, but people can contact you if they have. Maybe others.
Sure. I'm open. I've been keeping away from the XJW community a little bit, if I'm being honest, just because I didn't want to be stuck in it.
No.
Wanted to move on. But if anyone knows me or like recognizes me from meetings or conventions and wants to get in touch, please do.
The best feeling would be that some friends from your past leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, some of your good friends.
That's happened already.
It happened already.
It's wonderful. They read an article I wrote for Hjelpekilden here, and then they're like, oh, we saw it and we're also out, and
Isn't that wonderful?
It's always such a joy to receive a joy. I know what they're about to go through, so it's also sad, but I love hearing from people, and I'm here in whatever capacity I have for them. So, yeah.
Fantastic, Ashley. Thank you very much for participating in this little podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Always. Så